How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, S-H-O-W, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Delighted to have you with me this second hour. 877-973-7425 is the phone number. Honestly, I'm telling you that because I want you to remember it, but I can't take calls today. We have a technical issue based on streaming in my building today. So I can do a video feed or I could do call screening, and the video feed's more important. So can't call in. That's why yesterday was like an open line Friday, but you'll have phones back next week. They're going to resolve this tech issue in the building. So not my radio station building. It's my building. So I knew it was coming. It's okay. They're working on it. I want to talk to you about the Affordable Care Act because Republicans have thus far, it seems, managed to kill off the extensions of the subsidies. However, something may come back. The Hill, Mike Lillis and Emily Brooks have this story. House Republican leaders are considering allowing an amendment vote to extend Obamacare enhanced subsidies, a move designed to appease moderate Republicans who have been warning about the electoral impacts of letting them expire at the end of the year. In a closed-door meeting in the Capitol on Friday morning, Republican leaders huddled with various groups of Republicans to hash out their strategy on the enhanced tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, which benefit more than 20 million people. Leaving the meeting, party leaders said no final decisions have been made, but the conversation focused largely on the possibility of staging a vote on an extension of the Obamacare subsidies as an amendment to the larger Republican health care package, which is expected to get a vote next week. So, what is going on here? Well, the Republicans don't have the votes in the House or the Senate to extend the Obamacare subsidies as somewhat done. And I think it's a terrible idea, even as I recognize it is good policy, or good politics. It's terrible policy. But it takes the issue off the table for next year's elections. My view is kind of simple. Why don't you do other things to try to mitigate the problems? Why don't you do other things to try to mitigate people not liking you instead of expanding and extending what you know is terrible policy? Because it is terrible policy. Obamacare is terrible policy. So here's just the reality that you and I don't like to talk about, but we need to talk about it. Obamacare was passed in 2010. So now I'm not a math genius. In fact, I went to law school to avoid having to do math. Still have to do math on occasion, like right now. But if my math is right, and it is the year of our Lord 2025, and Obamacare was passed in 2010, that means it's 15 years old, if I did my math right. So Republicans have had 15 years to design an alternative to Obamacare, and they have failed to design an alternative to Obamacare. And all they're doing is death by 1,000 cuts of Obamacare. All the Democrats are doing is death by 1,000 cuts of Obamacare. The difference between the two is that the Democrats have a method to the madness of their pain. The Democrats actually want universal health care. The Democrats actually want to cause Obamacare disruptions to such an extent that the voters decide, you know what? I would rather us have universal government-run health care than anything else because it sucks, it's too expensive, and I got to find something to lower prices. Now, never mind that they will walk into a massive government subsidy that winds up bringing about assisted suicide and drives up costs and does all sorts of terrible things. At this point, they're kind of desperate. But I want to play for you Patty Murray, who is a senator from Washington State, who's very progressive, giving you the end game here.
Mr. President, let me close with this. If Republicans truly want to have a serious bipartisan conversation about health care, we can do that. Democrats are happy to do that. But there is a fire burning right now, and a lot of people are about to get burned if we don't put it out. So the first step has to be passing the bill Democrats have put forward, simply extending the tax credits and saving health care for millions of families in the country. We could have talked about reforms earlier, and once we do this, we can still talk about reforms later. But right now, we have to put this fire out, and we have a bill that does that. Now, I am hoping against hope and against history that reason wins out and Republicans join us to pass this bill. But I will say, if Republicans refuse to do the right thing, the thing their own constituents are begging all of us to do, they should know Democrats are not going to walk away from this fight. I'm going to continue to hold Republicans accountable. And more importantly, the American people are going to hold Republicans accountable too, with their voices and with their votes. Democrats will also keep sharing a vision for how we do rebuild a stronger healthcare system after this Republican wreckage. Because as much as we want to save these health tax credits, I think everyone knows that is a starting point. It is a bare minimum. We still need universal health care in America. We have needed it for a very long time. It is what I've always been fighting for. And whatever happens in the next few days, I'm going to keep pushing for reforms that make high-quality health care that's actually affordable a reality for every American. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
That's Patty Murray. Now, she's one of the ranking members on the Appropriations Committee, and you heard her say it. She wants universal health care. She wants government-run health care. So here's the problem. If the Republicans extend the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, the only reforms the Democrats are going to want is reforms that actually expand government control of health care. The Democrats aren't going to move to the right on health care. They want the Republicans to move to the left on health care, and it may be politically popular to do so, but it would devastate the country economically. This is Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House.
Let's be very clear about one thing. When the Democrats talk about health care affordability, okay, this catchphrase that they have, they are talking about one thing and one thing only. They are talking about continuing handouts to big insurance companies. They have no ideas, they have no desire to fix the broken system they created. They just want to subsidize it. And subsidy is a big word. It means they're taking taxpayer dollars and funding a broken system. That is their entire affordability agenda in a nutshell. This agenda does not lower health care costs. All it does is hide the cost of the failed law, which we assume is the point. And their proposal, which is a 3-year extension of these enhanced subsidies, the Democrat COVID subsidies that they created, that they put the expiration date on for this December, that proposal to extend that for 3 years is devoid of any reforms to clamp down on the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse. And it continues to provide taxpayer-subsidized health care to Americans who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual salary. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. But it makes all the sense in the world if you realize that the Democrats actually continue to want to break the system. The Democrats continue to want to break the system and drive up the costs to force us to say, well, there's nothing left we can do. Might as well let the government take care of it. Let the government take it over. Y'all, it is not a good look for the country's economy already to have $39 trillion national debt. You keep extending the subsidies that the Democrats themselves voted to get rid of, and that's an important point. The Democrats themselves voted to get rid of the subsidy. Only now are they bringing it up. And you know what's happening here now is that Democrats increasingly are of the mind that they want to shut down the government again. And I kind of think we ought to let them. If they get to that point, if they work into a frenzy about it, let them shut it down. Let them shut it down. Why? Let them shut it down, and you ahead of time get prepared to say that this is all part of the Democrats' campaign strategy. And Republicans hold the line. You keep voting to reopen it. Even this past time, I know there was a lot of polling that showed early on people blamed the Republicans, but it began to shift. And even the media outlets, even CNN, even MSNBC struggled to explain how it was that the Democrats were trying to reopen the government. It became very apparent that it was, in fact, the Democrats who were keeping things shut down. Now, they stopped before Thanksgiving. They didn't want the wreckage of Thanksgiving. There's nothing on the calendar. You get to January, February, there's really nothing on the calendar. What, Memorial Day? There are a few odds and ends. There are spring breaks, things like that. But the Democrats are actually, this is part of their thinking, that they had October until Thanksgiving. They couldn't keep the government closed through Thanksgiving because it would be a disaster. They knew they would get blamed. But they actually are thinking in their private conversations that you shut the government down in February. You got March, you got April, you got May. That's 4 months. You can keep it shut down until Memorial Day. Show the Democratic base they're fighting. I think it blows up in their face, and I think we ought to let them do it. There's no reason to cave on this because we financially can't do it as a nation. Democrats are always willing to grow the government. Republicans never seem willing to cut the government. I mean, think just go back to the first hour. You've got the people in Washington and the conservative movement threatening states like Indiana. If you don't do what we want, we're gutting your military bases. We're not giving you money for roads or education or anything else. If the Democrats had done that, Republicans would be on the verge of civil war. If Barack Obama told red states, we're not giving you money for roads or bridges or anything else until you do exactly what we want, and got away with it, this country would rapidly collapse. The Democrats are demanding a shutdown of government until we give them what they want, and I think that at the state level, given time, people are going to react very negatively to the Democrats constantly holding them hostage. They're not going to like it any more than they like Donald Trump bullying people. There is a way and a methodology for the Republicans to advance, and what you got to do is not extend the subsidies and start working on reform. But, I get it. I do. We've had 15 years since Obamacare for the Republicans to suggest an alternative, and they haven't. They haven't come up with a proposal. They haven't come up with multiple proposals. You don't have to do it all at one time. This is one of my big big issues here is comprehensivism, that we have to have comprehensive plans in Washington. You got to have comprehensive immigration reform. You got to have comprehensive health care reform. No, you don't. Do it in bits and pieces. Break it apart into smaller chunks and let people see if they can improve the system. But the leadership says, no, if you touch this, then this is going to get affected, and then this is going to, let them get affected and then pass legislation to fix the next effect downstream, and on it goes until you've got a better system. Republicans can't even bring themselves to do that, which is why they're losing the conversation. That's why they're losing the argument. It's why they're losing the debate. They've had 15 years to come up with a different plan, and they haven't. I would advise Donald Trump, why don't you come up with Trump Care? Make it a massive free market windfall. Make it a massive free market reform to Obamacare. We're going to get rid of the subsidies. We're going to get rid of the minimum requirements. We're going to get rid of all the funding demands. We're going to do a massive free market system. It's going to lower costs because the free market brings efficiencies to bear that Washington can't. Why don't you bring Trump Care out? Trot it out next year that we're going to bring the free market. Don't expect Republicans to do it, though, because Republicans have had 15 years to fix the issue, and they're losing the debate now because in 15 years they've never bothered to offer an alternative. So we're playing on the Democrats' ground here because of that. Hello there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. Delighted to have you guys. Have you kept up with the Sharon Moore situation? This is the University of Michigan football coach. This is from Fox News. He will be arraigned in court today on stalking and home invasion charges, days after his shocking dismissal from the Wolverines program over allegations he had an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. As those of you who don't know, he apparently was sleeping with a staff member, got fired by the athletic director. They had already been told, according to press reports now, that he was having serious mental issues. The athletic director, undeterred, decided to go fire him himself without any human resources staff or security present. The guy went to the woman's home, threatened to kill her and himself. The guy's wife, he's married. She was able to track down his location. The police were able to arrest him without incident. My goodness gracious. It is absolutely crazy to me that whole situation, first, it was badly mishandled by the University of Michigan. There are all sorts of rumors out there about Plan B drugs being delivered to his office, which raised suspicions. I don't know whether a lot of this stuff is true or just idle gossip, but it's out there, and people are chattering about all this stuff. But it seems real obvious that there was a real issue, and it just completely got away from him with this guy who had real issues. Wonder who the next coach is going to be. Man, they've had some coaching problems there now for a while, haven't they? Wow. Oh, I've got some friends down the street who are big Michigan fans and feel bad for them. At least football season's over before it happened. Now, I got to tell you about Swiss America. Oh, wait, no, they got a playoff game, don't they? Wow. Swiss America has been warning people about a secret war on cash for some time, and they want to raise the alerts with you on it. They want to give you their free report. It is completely free. All you do is call them at 800-289-2646 and tell them Eric sent you. If you're like me and you don't want to talk to people, you can also text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646, and they'll text you back a link and get you all the information. You fill out your information, they get you the report. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. It can save on your retirement and finances. Swiss America has been the trusted leader in this country for precious metals for 40 years. I have bought several nice, great pieces of gold with them, and they're just good people. Look at the gold prices right now. Diversification with gold, not a bad thing. Swiss America can talk to you about that as well, but they really want you to have this report, The Secret War on Cash, completely free. That involves crypto as well. The government's trying to steer you to plastic so they can monitor you and control you. 800-289-2646. Call them or give them my name by text, 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric. SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Message and data rates may apply. Y'all, it dawned on me in commercial break. I hadn't even thought about it until I saw somebody else mention it on social media. Sharon Moore, University of Michigan football coach, who he got fired. They had suspicions about him. Turns out he was sleeping with a staffer, had some mental issues. They fired him. He went to the staffer's house. Sharon Moore is married. Went to the staffer's house, threatened to kill her and himself. He's going to be arraigned today for stalking and other charges. I just realized, is this not the funniest thing? The Michigan Stadium, the home of University of Michigan football, is the largest stadium in the United States. Do you know what its nickname is? The Big House. Sharon Moore is literally going to go from the big house to the big house. Wow. I shouldn't laugh, but still, I mean, you call your stadium the big house. That's what a lot of people call jail, too. And he's going to go from the big house to the big house. Wow. Just what a horrible story. Mental health is just, people are really struggling right now, including this guy. Fame and fortune can just compile it into just something terrible. I got to move on to other stuff because there are a couple of different stories out here, and they're all actually related. I want to start, and by the way, they're all in the show notes today. If you text the word ERIC, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, I'm going to send you back a lot of links. In fact, I'm going to do it myself because it's been a while since I've done it. So the number is 33777. The word you said is ERIC, E-R-I-C-K. And the very first link back, it says subscribe to my daily note. You click that link. You can see all the show notes today completely free. You get the 4 Things to Know podcast, the show podcast, the live stream, social media, you get it all. But that first link, if you text Eric to 33777, you get the show notes. It's completely free today, not behind the paywall. Today's the last day of the year that's going to happen. You can see what you're missing. It's only $7 a month, $70 for a year subscription. It's great. And this story is in there. Headline: Luxury cars and private villas. See how Minnesota fraudsters spent millions intended for hungry kids. This is the Somali scam in Minnesota. Luxury cars, private villas, and overseas wire transfers. CBS News obtained dozens of files and photos that reveal how Minnesota fraudsters blew through hundreds of millions in taxpayer dollars as part of one of the biggest COVID-era fraud schemes. The files document a spending spree in which defendants, many of them Somali descendants, took taxpayer money meant to feed hungry children and used it to buy cars, property, and jewelry. Videos show them popping champagne at an opulent Maldives resort. In a text message, one defendant boasts, "You are going to be the richest 25-year-old, inshallah," meaning God willing. The documents feature exhibits from a recent federal trial, many of which are being made public by CBS News for the first time. The exhibits include a confirmation email for a stay in an over-the-water villa with a private pool at Radisson Blu Resort, Maldives, lakefront property in Minnesota, receipts showing wire transfers to China and East Africa, first-class tickets to Istanbul and Amsterdam, a 2021 Porsche Macan, stacks of cash texted between defendants. At the sentencing of a defendant who used taxpayer funds for cars in the Maldives vacation, 24-year-old Abdimajid Mohammed Noor, U.S. District Judge Nancy Brazel admonished him, saying, "Where others saw a crisis and rushed to help, you saw money and rushed to steal." He was sentenced to 10 years in prison in order to pay nearly $48 million in restitution for his role in the fraud scheme. Noor is one of dozens who siphoned hundreds of millions in stolen taxpayer funds, with questions still swirling about where all the money went. There are real and credible allegations that the money did go to the Middle East and Somalia, including to terrorist organizations. CBS News is now exposing the fraud coming on the heels of Chris Rufo. And I want to note something. This is very important that you understand this. The indictments happened and the federal government proceeded, including, I should note, the Biden administration with the investigation, carried into the Trump administration. And no one really covered it. Christopher Rufo and City Journal provided the permission structure to cover the story. What do I mean by that? The media doesn't like to tell stories where minorities are engaging in rampant fraud, because the progressives in the media believe it perpetuates a stereotype that is harmful to non-white minorities in the United States. The New York Times could have covered the story. The Minnesota Press could have covered the story. CBS News could have covered the story. It was out there. The indictments happened. The feds made it clear what was going on, and none of them wanted to touch the story until Christopher Rufo touched the story and made it a big deal among conservatives. And at first, CBS News' reaction was to be dismissive of the story, actually. They had to issue a retraction. And then they started digging, and this is the product of what they dug into. It was a massive Somali-based fraud scheme where they were, in fact, wiring money to Somalia. And Christopher Rufo does have the documentation to show that some of it went to al-Shabaab, an al-Qaeda terrorist network. And by the way, most mainstream outlets are still avoiding that part of it. And they've been challenging Scott Besson on television, among other things, over the weekend, pushing back on it. But the fact of the matter is it's documented, it's true, it happened. And they were funding terrorism with taxpayer dollars from Minnesota. The media needed some entity out there to push the story into the broader conversation, and only a conservative group would do it because the progressive groups are so into critical theory. And remember, critical theory is non-whites are suppressed by whites, and so you can't provide narratives that suggest that the non-whites are engaged in white people behavior. White people behavior is criminal. Non-white behavior is derived from that criminality, and so all crime that non-white people do in this country can actually be attributed to the pressures and systems put in place by the white people. Hard to paint that picture here. So Christopher Rufo had to break through it with his story, and now everybody else is free to report it, but it required a conservative group with credibility. Rufo's a credible person. Christopher Rufo, like the people at the Washington Free Beacon as well, they haven't descended into rabbit hole conspiracy theories. That's one of the things Rufo has been warning people about for a while now, is that you on the right have got to avoid the conspiratorial thinking for people to take you seriously. And he's worked very hard to avoid conspiratorial thinking. He's got the goods, he's got the receipts, they're interpreted fairly. You don't have to twist the facts to get where he lands. You can see it for yourself. And it's brought him a lot of credibility to be able to tell stories that can then be amplified by the mainstream media. Same with the Washington Free Beacon, that routinely scores stories that then translate into the larger media atmosphere. I'm reminded it was the Washington Free Beacon that broke a number of the stories about Stacey Abrams' mismanagement of funds and her group's mismanagement of funds in Georgia that the national press, including the Georgia press, refused to touch until the Washington Free Beacon made it safe to touch it because they're a credible organization. They've got a good reputation. They don't dive into racism and conspiracy theories. Speaking of the Washington Free Beacon, Adam Credo there brings this. A grand jury indictment was unsealed charging Tashella Sherry Amore Dickerson, age 52, of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, with wire fraud and money laundering. This from the U.S. Attorney Robert Troster from the Western District of Oklahoma. According to the indictment, beginning in at least 2016, Dickerson served as the executive director of Black Lives Matter OKC. As executive director, Dickerson had access to Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City's bank, PayPal, and Cash App accounts. The indictment alleges that although Black Lives Matters was not a registered tax-exempt organization under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, it accepted charitable donations through its affiliates with the Alliance for Global Justice based in Arizona. The Alliance for Global Justice served as a fiscal sponsor to Black Lives Matters Oklahoma City and required them to use its funds only as permitted by 501c3. The Alliance for Global Justice also required Black Lives Matters Oklahoma to fully account upon request for the disbursement of all funds received and prohibited them from using its funds to purchase real estate without consent. Beginning in the late spring of 2020, Black Lives Matters Oklahoma City raised funds to support its social justice mission from online donors as well as from national bail funds. In total, they raised more than $5.6 million, which included grants from national bail funds, including the Community Justice Exchange, Massachusetts Bail Fund, and Minnesota Freedom Fund. Most of those funds were routed through the Alliance for Global Justice. So the executive director of Black Lives Matters Oklahoma City being charged with wire fraud and money laundering. But wait, there's a third story. This one comes from the New York Times. The Department of Housing and Urban Development said on Thursday it was opening an investigation into housing policies in Boston, scrutinizing whether the city discriminated against white people. In a letter to Mayor Michelle Wu of Boston, Craig Traynor, The Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity said the city government had prioritized people of color in its affordable housing strategy and encouraged banks and real estate developers to work with those communities rather than all low-income households. It was the latest example of the Trump administration's push against diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and rollback of civil rights protections meant to prevent discrimination against minorities. As you are aware, the Trump administration is dedicated to protecting the civil rights of all Americans. At your office's direction, however, city officials have set out to smuggle racial equity into every layer of operation in city government, Mr. Traynor said. Mr. Traynor said his office was investigating whether the city had violated federal laws against discrimination in housing sales or rentals based on race, sex, or national origin. The inquiry's findings could be used to file charges against the city. The mayor says it's an unhinged attack from Washington, but you know what they have found? In Boston, banks and real estate developers were pressured by the city to discriminate against poor whites. That's right. Discriminated against poor white people. They used race. They didn't just look at people's income. They had to prioritize non-white people over white people. They couldn't just be equal opportunity for everyone. They had to exclude white people. The city of Boston did this. They got the receipts on this. They got the chain of emails and documents to show that there was a lot of pressure by the city to discriminate against poor white people in Boston. Common thread in all these is race and how the left operates under race and the permission structures to operate on race and how they would have gotten away with it if a Democrat had gotten elected. You see, so, I've been real critical lately of the Trump administration on stuff. I have. I've been critical of them on tariffs, on giving the NVIDIA chips to China, on how they handled this redistricting fiasco around the country just today. I've been critical of the Trump administration, and I continue to get from people, well, you voted for this. Aren't you seeing that Kamala Harris would have been better? And that's my point to these people. No, she still would have been worse. I got problems with the Trump administration, but rest assured, I understand she would have been worse. Here's the city of Boston engaged in systemic racism against poor white people. In the name of racial inclusion, it was real, actual discrimination, and Kamala Harris would have let it happen. Do you really think Black Lives Matter's Oklahoma City would have been indicted for wire fraud and money laundering if Kamala Harris were president? Because I assure you, Democrats would ultimately wind up with campaign funds from it. Do you think anything would have been done in the Minnesota fraud case with the Somalis funneling money to terrorists in Somalia if Tim Walz was vice president of the United States? No. It would have all been swept under the rug. It would have all been covered up by the mainstream media and by politicians across America and by the judicial system and the Justice Department. They all would have collaborated. They all would have covered it up because racial equity, diversity initiatives, that they had to advance them. They couldn't make it look bad. They had to allow crime. Otherwise, the narrative would be disrupted. So, yeah, I got problems with what the Trump administration is doing, and I wish they would do better because I think the Democrats are going to get swept into power in the midterms because of it. But would I vote for him again over her, knowing what I know now? Yes, I would, because of stuff like this, because this stuff would have been protected by Kamala Harris. It would have been expanded by Kamala Harris. There's no perfect side. People seem to think it's either or, either the Trump administration and all of its sins or Kamala Harris is a sin-free person and candidate. No, we're all sinners. Which sinners I have in charge of me is the issue, and I'd prefer smaller government because I want as few sinners in charge of me as possible. One of my biggest indictments of the Trump administration is they've been embracing big government just like the Democrats. But when it comes to big governments to the Democrats or big government to the Republicans, I'd at least prefer the Republicans in charge so stuff like this does get prosecuted. Hi there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I got asked why I didn't talk about yesterday or today the Benny Thompson situation where he was talking to Kristi Noem in a congressional hearing. He's the congressman from, I think, Maryland, and referred to the murder of the National Guard soldier in D.C. and the shooting of the other one as a unfortunate accident. And I tend not to, when things like that are done, respond in the immediate. We put it in the show notes yesterday so you could see it. But he came out this morning and said he very much regretted that. It was a mistake. He didn't mean to suggest it was an accident. And you know what? I would want people to give me the benefit of the doubt if I said something and made a mistake. I do the same for others, whether you like it or not. I heard that yesterday. It's like, even that guy, I don't think means this. And yeah, he has completely, and it was a real apology. He came out and said it was terrorism. He didn't mean to suggest that. And so I have moved on from it. Now, when we come back, we got to move on to, well, not just the Russians, but what we're doing in the Caribbean. The United States has unsealed a California grand jury indictment exposing how Russian hackers targeted critical infrastructure in the United States. They targeted a regional airport in Missouri. They targeted drinking water and water storage facilities in Texas, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. They targeted a meatpacking facility in California. One cyber attack caused 200,000 gallons of water to overflow in Texas. Another caused 2,000 pounds of meat to spoil. The Russians are here. The Chinese are here. The Iranians are here. The North Koreans are here. And we are building up a massive flotilla in the Caribbean, trying to bring about regime change in Venezuela without actually going in there to do it. And now we're saying we may go after the Colombians as well. What's going on? I'll tell you when we come back. But first, I need to tell you about Vision Computers. Listen, if you know someone who could use computer help and you don't want to be their computer help, you don't want to be their IT service, Vision Computers can do it for you. If you call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com, you can find out more about Vision. They build computers. They can upgrade your existing computer for you in most cases. If you've got a Windows 11 compliant computer, they can copy everything over onto a brand new machine exactly the way you have it, so you never skip a beat. You just got a newer, better, faster machine. But they can do the managed IT for you, for your parent, for your grandparent, for your kid at college, for your kid in the gig economy, whatever you need, where they get a special phone number they're able to call anytime, and 15 seconds or less, somebody answers the phone and helps solve their computer issues. They can even remote in. They can do printer support. They can do email support. They can help keep you up and going and productive, minimize your downtime. Call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. If you've got an elderly relative, they also help them deal with the scammers who call. They can help you. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com.